Chapter 1. The offering forest had no mercy for the lost. Alara stumbled through the underbrush, her bare feet torn and bleeding, her wedding dress once ivory silk, now mud-stained and ripped, dragging behind her like a burial shroud. The wolves hadn't touched her. They didn't need to. The pack had already decided her fate: sacrifice her to the monster, appease the ancient law, save the village. She'd heard the whispers for weeks, the missing livestock, the shadows that moved wrong at twilight, the old women who crossed themselves and locked their doors before sunset. And when the elders gathered in the stone circle at the edge of town, Alara knew before they even spoke her name that she would be the one chosen, a widow at 23. No family, no protector, no worth, the perfect offering. They'd dressed her in white, braided flowers into her dark hair, and walked her to the edge of the thornwood forest as if leading a lamb to slaughter. The pack alpha, a man whose cruelty wore the mask of duty, had bound her wrists with red cord and pressed a blade into her palm. "If you run," he'd said, his breath, hot against her ear, "we'll hunt you ourselves." So she hadn't run. She'd walked, into the forest, into the dark, into whatever waited beyond the veil of ancient trees, where no mortal dared tread after nightfall. Now, hours later, the moon hung low and swollen above the canopy. The forest floor stretched endlessly in every direction, roots twisting like skeletal fingers, fog curling around her ankles. She could feel it, the wrongness in the air, the weight of something watching. She stopped walking. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Blood dripped from her palm where the ceremonial blade had cut to deep. The pack had told her to spill her blood at the threshold, to call him, to complete the offering. She'd refused. But the forest had other plans. The fog thickened. The trees groaned. And then silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that made prey animals freeze before the predator struck. Alara turned slowly. He stood 20 paces away, half hidden in shadow, tall, impossibly still. Eyes that gleamed like polished silver in the moonlight. She'd expected a monster. Fangs and claws and hunger. What she found instead was a man who looked carved from marble, and midnight dark hair falling past his collar, sharp cheekbones, a mouth pressed into a hard, unreadable line. He wore black from throat to boots, no armor, no weapon. He didn't need one. The air around him hummed with restrained power. "You're trespassing," he said. His voice was low, cold, aristocratic. The kind of voice that had ordered executions and been obeyed without question. Alara's knees buckled. She caught herself against a tree, her bound wrists shaking. I didn't choose this." His gaze dropped to the red cord, then to the blood still dripping from her hand. Something flickered across his face. Anger, or perhaps recognition. "They sent you as an offering." It wasn't a question. She nodded, throat tight. He moved, then faster than anything human should move. One moment he stood in shadow. The next he was before her, close enough that she could see the faint tracery of veins beneath his pale skin, the unnatural stillness of his chest. He didn't breathe. He reached for her wrists. Alara flinched, but he didn't strike. Instead, he sliced through the red cord with a flick of his fingers, the binding falling away like ash. His touch was ice cold. "Fools," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "They still think the old packs hold." She couldn't say it, couldn't make the word real. His silver eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something almost like weariness in them. "A vampire, yes, and you are a woman about to bleed out in my forest because your pack is too cowardly to face their own debts." He stepped back, scanning the shadows beyond the trees. His jaw tightened. "They're watching," he said quietly, "waiting to see if I'll take you, if I'll feed, if the bargain still binds." He turned back to her, and his expression hardened. "It doesn't. The houses dissolved those oaths a century ago. Your elders know this. They sent you here to die because it was easier than admitting their superstitions are worthless." Alara's chest tightened. She'd known they didn't value her, but to hear it spoken aloud that they'd sent her to her death for nothing made her stomach twist with rage and grief. "Then, let me go," she whispered. "I can't." Her heart stopped. He gestured toward the forest behind her. "The rival house has been circling this territory for weeks. If I release you now, they'll take you before you reach the village border. And unlike me, they don't honor consent." Consent? The word felt foreign in this context. His gaze sharpened. "I don't feed without permission. Neither do any vampires bound by the nocturne accords." "But House Draven," he exhaled slowly, a sound like wind through a crypt. "They follow older laws, crueler ones. Alara's vision swam. Blood loss, terror, exhaustion. She swayed, and he caught her before she fell, his grip firm, steadying, shockingly gentle. "You're hurt," he said, his tone shifting. Less commander, more something else. Concerned, maybe. Though it felt wrong to attribute such a human emotion to a creature like him. "I'm fine," she lied. "You're bleeding." Barefoot, and abandoned in hostile territory. He studied her face, and for a heartbeat, she thought she saw something flicker in his eyes. Respect, or pity. "You're the opposite of fine." He released her carefully as if she might shatter. "I'll take you to the estate," he said. "You'll be safe there. In 3 days, when the moon wanes, I'll escort you past Draven's borders. After that, you're free." Alara stared at him. "Why would you help me?" His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Bitter, ancient. "Because I'm tired of cleaning up after foolish mortals," he said softly. "And because no one deserves to be thrown away like refuse." Before she could respond, he turned and began walking deeper into the forest. Alara hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee, to take her chances with the wolves and the rival vampires and whatever horrors waited in the dark. But then she looked down at her torn feet, her bleeding hand, the wedding dress that had been meant to be her shroud. She had nothing left to lose. So she followed the vampire into the night. Chapter 2. The obsidian Estatith vampire's estate rose from the forest like a monument to forgotten elegance. Alara had expected ruins, crumbling stone and creeping ivy, the sort of gothic decay that haunted old stories. What she found instead stole her breath: a sprawling manor of black stone and arched windows, candlelight flickering behind leaded glass, gardens that bloomed despite the late hour. It looked lived in, maintained, loved. Even it looked like a home. He led her through iron gates that opened at his approach, no key required, then up a cobblestone path lined with night-blooming jasmine. The scent made her dizzy, or perhaps that was the blood loss. She stumbled on the front steps. His hand caught her elbow instantly, steadying her with that same careful gentleness that felt at odds with everything she'd been taught about his kind. "Almost there," he said quietly. The front door swung open. Before he touched it, revealing a grand entrance hall lit by dozens of candles in iron sconces. Dark wood floors gleamed underfoot. A sweeping staircase curved upward into shadow. Tapestries depicting ancient battles hung from the walls, soldiers and creatures locked in eternal combat, thread glinting like spilled blood. Alara's legs gave out. He caught her before she hit the floor, lifting her with effortless strength. She should have been terrified, helpless in a vampire's arms, carried deeper into his domain, but exhaustion had stripped away her fear. She was too tired to fight, too broken to care. "I won't hurt you," he said, as if reading her resignation. "You have my word." "A vampire's word," she murmured against his shoulder. "What's that worth?" "More than a human's, in my experience." She didn't have the energy to argue. He carried her up the stairs, down a long corridor lined with portraits of stern-faced men and women in outdated finery. Family, she realized, or what passed for family among immortals. At the end of the hall, he shouldered open a door and stepped into a bedroom that looked like it belonged in a queen's palace. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in deep emerald velvet. A fireplace crackled with fresh flames, though she hadn't seen him light it. Windows overlooked the gardens, moonlight spilling across polished floors. He set her down on the bed with surprising care, then stepped back as if proximity might burn them both. "There's a washroom through that door," he said, gesturing to a carved wooden panel. "Clean clothes in the wardrobe, bandages in the cabinet." He paused, his silver eyes scanning her torn feet, her bleeding hand. "I'll send for supplies." "Send?" Alara's voice came out hoarse. "There are others here?" "No." He moved toward the door. "I live alone." "Then who? The house remembers what's needed." He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Rest. I'll return in an hour to check your wounds." He was gone. Before she could respond, the door clicking shut with quiet finality. Alara sat in stunned silence, alone in a vampire's guest room, wearing a ruined wedding dress, bleeding onto emerald sheets. This couldn't be real. None of it. She'd wake up in her cottage, or in a ditch, or already dead, but the pain in her feet felt real. The exhaustion weighing down her bones felt real. She forced herself to stand. The washroom was immaculate, white marble and brass fixtures, a clawfoot tub large enough to drown in. Someone or something had already drawn a bath. Steam rose from the water, carrying the scent of lavender and rosemary. Alara nearly wept. She peeled off the wedding dress, letting it pool on the floor like a discarded skin, then sank into the hot water with a gasp of relief. The heat stung her cuts, but she didn't care. For the first time in hours, she felt almost human. She scrubbed away the dirt and blood, watching the water turn pink. Her mind spun in circles. The pack had abandoned her. The vampire had saved her. Rival houses wanted her dead for reasons she didn't understand, and she had 3 days. 3 days to heal. 3 days to survive. 3 days before he released her back into a world that had already thrown her away. She dried herself with towels that smelled like cedar and moonlight, then opened the wardrobe. Inside hung simple but elegant clothing, linen, shifts, wool dresses, even a nightgown that looked like it hadn't been worn in decades. Everything was perfectly preserved, as if waiting for a guest who never came. She chose the nightgown's soft white cotton, modest and warm, and wrapped herself in a robe she found hanging on a hook. In the cabinet, just as he'd promised, she found bandages, salve, and clean linen strips. She treated her feet first, wincing as she cleaned the cuts, then wrapped them carefully. Her hand took longer. The ceremonial blade had cut deep, and the wound still bled sluggishly. She pressed a cloth against it, applying pressure until the bleeding slowed. A soft knock interrupted her work. Alara froze. "Come in." The vampire entered, carrying a wooden tray. On it, bread, cheese, dried fruit, a pewter cup filled with dark red wine. He set it on the small table beside the bed, his movements precise, controlled. "You need to eat," he said. "Blood loss weakens mortals quickly." She eyed the wine suspiciously. His mouth twitched almost a smile. "It's wine, not blood. I'm not in the habit of poisoning guests. Just feeding on them?" The words came out sharper than she intended. She regretted them immediately, but he didn't flinch. "I haven't fed from a human in over 50 years, he said calmly. "And when I did, it was always consensual, always compensated, never to the point of harm." Alara stared at him. "Why? Why what? Why stop?" Something dark crossed his face. "Grief, maybe. Or guilt. Because I grew tired of taking," he said quietly. Even when freely given, it felt like theft. The honesty in his voice disarmed her. He gestured to the tray. "Eat. I'll check your hand." She wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain some dignity, some distance. But hunger won. She tore off a piece of bread and forced herself to chew while he crossed to her side. He actually knelt beside the bed, his silver eyes level with hers. "May I?" The question startled her. Permission, consent. He kept asking for it. She extended her hand. His fingers were cold as he unwrapped the bandage, examining the wound with clinical focus. He said nothing for a long moment, his jaw tight. "This needs stitches," he said finally. The blade was meant to scar. Scar? The old rituals required marked offerings, a way to identify those given to the houses. His expression hardened. "Barbaric, cruel, designed to ensure no one would take you back, even if you survived." Alara's stomach twisted. They'd wanted her gone, permanently. "I can stitch it," he continued, "but it will hurt." Or, he hesitated, and for the first time, she saw uncertainty in his eyes. "I could seal it." Vampire blood accelerates healing. A single drop would close the wound in minutes. Her breath caught. "Your blood?" "Yes." "What would that do to me?" "Nothing permanent. You won't turn. You won't be bound. You'll simply heal faster." He met her gaze steadily. "But I won't offer it without your full consent." Alara studied him, this ancient, powerful creature kneeling at her bedside, asking permission to help her. Everything she'd been taught said vampires were monsters, predators, soulless. But he'd saved her, sheltered her, treated her with more kindness than her own people. "Do it," she whispered. He produced a small silver blade from his coat, made a precise cut across his palm, then held his hand over hers. A single drop of blood, dark, almost black, fell onto her wound. The effect was immediate. Heat bloomed through her hand, not painful but intense, like lightning trapped beneath her skin. She watched in stunned silence as the torn flesh knitted itself together. The bleeding stopped. The pain vanished. Within seconds, only a faint pink line remained. She couldn't find words. "Effective," he finished. He wrapped a clean bandage around her hand anyway, his touch careful. "It will fade completely in a day or two." He stood, putting distance between them again, as if proximity was dangerous. "Thank you," Alara said softly. He inclined his head. "You should rest. Tomorrow, we'll discuss House Draven and what you'll face when you leave." "Wait." She caught his sleeve before he could turn away. What's your name? He looked down at her hand on his arm, and something shifted in his expression. Surprise, or perhaps longing. Lucian, he said quietly. My name is Lucian Ashford. Alara, she offered in return. Alara Thorne. Alara. He tested her name like it was something fragile, precious. Then he gently freed his arm and moved toward the door. Sleep, Alara Thorne. You're safe here. The door closed, and despite everything, despite the impossibility, the danger, the strangeness, Alara believed him. Chapter 3. The unnatural horse. Alara woke to complete darkness. No, not complete. Moonlight filtered through the windows, casting silver patterns across the floor. But the candles had extinguished themselves, and the fire had burned down to embers. She had no idea what time it was, only that her body ached and her mind felt clearer than it had in days. She sat up slowly, testing her bandaged hand. No pain. The cuts on her feet felt better too, though still tender. Whatever properties Lucian's blood possessed, they worked faster than any medicine she'd known. The thought unsettled her. She'd taken a vampire's blood into her body. Let it heal her. What did that mean? What invisible threads had been woven between them in that moment? A soft sound drew her attention. Footsteps in the corridor. Too light to be human. The door opened without a knock. Lucian stood in the threshold, still dressed in black, looking exactly as he had hours ago. No rumpled clothing. No sleep mussed hair. He probably didn't sleep at all. You're awake, he observed. You don't sleep. It wasn't a question. No, he stepped inside, carrying another tray, this one with fresh bread, honey and tea that steamed despite the late hour. We rest, but not as you do. A few hours of stillness before dawn. Nothing more. He set the tray on the table, then moved to the windows. With a gesture, heavy curtains slid closed, blocking out the moonlight. The room plunged into darkness for a heartbeat before candles ignited throughout the space, flames springing to life without match or tinder. Alara's breath caught. How the house is bound to me, he said it matter-of-factly, as if sentient architecture was commonplace. It responds to intention, need. It's been my sanctuary for 3 centuries. It knows what I want before I do. 3 centuries. The number made her dizzy. He looked no older than 35, perhaps 40. But he'd lived through ages she couldn't fathom. Wars, plagues, the rise and fall of kingdoms. You're staring, he said without turning around. Heat crept up her neck. I'm trying to understand. Understand what? You. She pulled the robe tighter around herself. You saved me, brought me here, healed me. Why? What do you gain? He turned then, his silver eyes unreadable. Does kindness require profit? In my experience, yes. Something flickered across his face. Sympathy, perhaps. Or recognition of a shared wound. Your pack taught you that. The world taught me that. He crossed to the chair near the fireplace and sat with unnatural grace, gesturing for her to eat. She obeyed, more from hunger than trust, tearing into the bread while he watched with that unsettling stillness only predators possessed. You want to know why I helped you, he said finally. The truth? Because watching you stumble through my forest, bleeding and abandoned, reminded me of something I'd rather forget. What? Myself? A very long time ago. His jaw tightened. Before I became this. Alara set down the bread. You weren't always a vampire? No one is born to this. His voice carried old bitterness. We're made, turned, some by choice, most by violence. Which were you? His gaze drifted to the fire. The latter. She waited, sensing he needed space to speak. Or perhaps permission. This creature who asked consent for everything, maybe he needed it too. I was 28, he said quietly. A minor lord's son. No fortune, no prospects, but I had honor. Or so I thought. His mouth twisted. I fell in love with a woman above my station. Her family disapproved. We planned to elope. Alara's chest tightened. She knew where this story led. Her brother discovered our plans. Lucian continued. He belonged to House Draven, a secret kept from even his own sister. He turned me as punishment, not to join their ranks, but to suffer. New vampires are uncontrollable, starving, monstrous. He locked me in a cellar and waited for the hunger to break me. Did it? Nearly. His hands clenched on the armrests. I killed 3 people before House Nocturne found me. They offered a choice, learn control or face execution. I chose control. And the woman you loved? Pain flashed through his eyes, so raw, so human, it made her ache. She married another, lived a full life, died of old age while I remained. This? He gestured to himself with disgust. Frozen, unchanging, alone. Silence settled between them, heavy with shared grief. Alara understood that pain, the loss of futures, the betrayal of those who should have protected you, the loneliness of being unwanted. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Don't be." He met her gaze. "I'm telling you this so you understand. I know what it's like to be thrown away, to be remade into something others fear, and I refuse to let that happen to anyone else if I can prevent it." Alara's throat tightened. "You're not a monster. You've known me for hours, and in those hours, you've shown me more decency than my own people did in years." He looked at her, then really looked, and something shifted in the air between them. Not attraction, not yet, but recognition. Two wounded souls seeing each other clearly in the dark. "You should rest more," he said, breaking the moment. "Tomorrow night, I'll teach you what you need to know about House Draven, their habits, their weaknesses, how to avoid them when I escort you out." "Tomorrow night?" Alara frowned. "Not tomorrow? I don't move during daylight hours." He rose, moving toward the door. "None of my kind do. Dawn paralyzes us, makes us vulnerable. It's the one weakness all vampires share. So you'll sleep? Rest. In the lower chambers where sunlight cannot reach." He paused at the threshold. "You'll be alone during the day. The house will provide what you need, but don't leave the estate grounds. Draven's scouts patrol the forest borders." Fear prickled down her spine. "What if they come here?" "They won't." Confidence rang in his voice. House Nocturne claimed this territory centuries ago. Draven may test boundaries, but they won't risk open war. Not yet. Not yet? His expression darkened. "There's tension between the houses. Has been for decades. Your pack's ritual sending you as an offering suggests they've been contacted by Draven. Promise protection or payment in exchange for providing." Fresh blood. Nausea churned in Alara's stomach. "They sold me, most likely." His hands flexed at his sides, barely controlled anger radiating from him. "Which means Draven knows you're here, knows I've taken you in. It's an insult to them. A challenge. Then why keep me? Why risk it?" He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something ancient and immovable. "Because I'm tired of their games. Tired of watching mortals suffer for immortal politics. And because," he trailed off, seeming to struggle with words, because you deserve better than to be currency in someone else's war." The words hit her like a physical touch, warm, unexpected, dangerous. Before she could respond, he inclined his head. "Good night, Alara. Good night, Lucian." He left, pulling the door closed with care, and she was alone again in the candlelit room. But this time, the solitude felt different. Less like abandonment, more like space to breathe. Alara lay back against the pillows, her mind racing. A vampire with honor, a house that answered to thought, ancient rivalries and blood debts. 3 days to learn how to survive in a world she'd never known existed, and beneath it all, a growing awareness that frightened her more than any threat. Lucian Ashford was nothing like the monsters from her childhood stories. He was dangerous in an entirely different way. Chapter 4. Daylight Captivity. Alara woke to sunlight, real sunlight, golden and warm, pouring through gaps in the curtains she must have opened in her sleep. She sat up, disoriented, her body protesting the movement. The room looked different in daylight, less mysterious, more real, and utterly silent. She rose, testing her feet. The cuts had healed to faint pink lines, barely tender. Lucian's blood had worked miracles overnight. She dressed in one of the simple wool dresses from the wardrobe, deep blue, well-made, sized as if tailored for her, and ventured into the corridor. "Lucian?" Her voice echoed through empty halls. No response. The portraits watched her pass with painted eyes, generations of Ashfords frozen in aristocratic dignity. She descended the sweeping staircase, trailing her fingers along polished wood, and emerged into the entrance hall. Still no one. The house felt alive but dormant, like a held breath. She could sense its awareness somehow, the way the floorboards creaked in welcome, the way doors stood slightly ajar as if inviting exploration. But no servants appeared. No footsteps sounded from distant rooms. She was completely alone. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt oddly liberating. No one watching. No one judging. For the first time in months, maybe years, she could simply exist without fear of consequence. Alara wandered through the ground floor, discovering room after room filled with evidence of Lucian's long life. A library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, books in languages she couldn't read, A music room with instruments she'd never seen. A conservatory where night-blooming flowers grew in defiance of the sun. In what appeared to be a study, she found a desk covered in maps and correspondence. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, unmistakably his. She shouldn't read his private papers, shouldn't invade his space, but curiosity won. Most of the letters were mundane reports from House Nocturne, territorial agreements, requests for mediation between lesser vampire families. But one caught her attention, the wax seal broken, the paper worn as if read many times. Lord Ashford, House Draven's movements grow bolder. 3 mortal settlements have reported missing livestock and unexplained deaths. The accords prohibit unsanctioned feeding. We request your presence at the council to address these violations before war becomes inevitable. Magistrate Voss, House Nocturneth date was 3 weeks old. Alar's pulse quickened. Draven had been hunting near her village. The pack hadn't been paranoid, the danger was real. But instead of seeking House Nocturne's protection, they'd chosen to appease the predators with human sacrifice. Cowards. A soft sound made her jump, a mechanical click from somewhere deep in the house. She set down the letter and followed the noise, descending a narrow staircase she hadn't noticed before. The air grew cooler, darker. Stone walls replaced wood paneling. Candles ignited as she passed the house, lighting her way. The staircase ended at a heavy iron door, slightly ajar. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back. This was where he rested, where vampires went to escape the killing. Son. She had no right to intrude, but the door stood open. An invitation? Or a test? Alara pushed it wider and stepped into the chamber beyond. It was beautiful, not a crypt, as she'd imagined, but a sanctuary. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadow. Thick carpets muffled her footsteps. And in the center, on a raised platform surrounded by candles that burned without smoke, stood an ornate bed draped in black velvet. Lucian lay motionless upon it, arms crossed over his chest, eyes closed. Dead. No, not dead. Resting. But the stillness was absolute. No breath, no movement, no sign of life whatsoever. He looked like a statue carved from pale marble, beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman. Alara's heart clenched. This was what he was. What he would always be. A creature suspended between life and death, belonging fully to neither. She shouldn't be here. Shouldn't witness him like this, vulnerable, exposed, trapped in daylight paralysis. But she couldn't look away. She moved closer, drawn by morbid fascination. His face was peaceful in repose. The hard lines softened, the ancient weariness temporarily erased. He looked younger, almost mortal, almost like the man he must have been 3 centuries ago, before violence remade him. Her hand reached out before she could stop herself, fingers hovering inches above his cheek. Don't touch. Don't cross that line. But the impulse was overwhelming, the need to confirm he was real. That this wasn't some elaborate dream conjured by blood loss and trauma. Her fingertips brushed his skin, ice cold, marble hard, completely still. And yet a pulse, faint, so faint she might have imagined it. Not a heartbeat exactly, but something. Some flicker of energy beneath the frozen surface, as if his body remembered what it once was and clung to the echo. Alara jerked her hand back, heart racing. What was she doing? Invading his rest, touching him without permission. The very things he'd been so careful not to do to her. Shame flooded through her. She backed away, nearly tripping over the carpet, and fled up the stairs. The iron door swung shut behind her with a resounding clang that made her flinch. The house was scolding her, she thought wildly, or protecting him. She spent the rest of the day in the library, trying to distract herself with books she could actually read, poetry, philosophy, histories written in careful script. But her mind kept drifting back to the chamber below, to Lucian, lying motionless in the dark, to the terrible vulnerability of creatures who couldn't defend themselves in daylight. And no wonder vampires were so careful about trust. No wonder they built sanctuaries and forged alliances. Every dawn brought helplessness. Every sunrise was a small death. Hours passed. The light shifted, golden afternoon fading to amber dusk, and then sudden awareness prickling down her spine. He was awake. She couldn't explain how she knew. Only that she felt it, like a change in air pressure. The house itself seemed to exhale, coming fully alive again. Footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate. Alara stood, smoothing her dress with nervous hands. He appeared in the library doorway, dressed in fresh black clothing, hair damp as if he'd bathed. His silver eyes found her immediately, and something in his expression made her breath catch. He knew. You went below, he said quietly, not accusatory, simply stating fact. I'm sorry, the words tumbled out. The door was open, and I didn't mean to intrude. I just wanted to see. He moved into the room with that liquid grace, his gaze never leaving hers. Wanted to confirm what I am when the sun holds me. Yes, no point lying. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could see the faint marks on his throat, scars perhaps from his own turning. And, are you sufficiently horrified? No, the answer surprised them both. I was. Sad. His eyebrows rose. Sad? You're trapped. Every day, the sun forces you into that stillness. You have no choice, no control. She met his gaze steadily. It must be terrifying. Silence stretched between them. His expression shifted, surprise melting into something softer. Vulnerable. It is, he admitted. Every dawn, there's a moment of panic. The paralysis sets in, and for a heartbeat, I wonder if this time I won't wake. If this time, the rest will become permanent. His voice dropped. 300 years, and I've never grown accustomed to it. Alar's chest ached. I shouldn't have touched you. You touched me? Heat flooded her face. Your cheek. Just. I needed to know you were real. He stared at her, and slowly, so slowly, his mouth curved into something almost like a smile. I felt it. You were awake? No. But the touch lingered. Like an echo. He tilted his head, studying her. No one has touched me during day rest in over a century. Not even house members. It's considered intimate. Oh God, I didn't know. I'm sorry, don't be. He stepped closer, and the air between them charged with something electric. Dangerous. You could have done anything while I was helpless. Stolen from me. Harmed me. Fled. Instead, you touched my face and felt sad. His voice carried wonder, as if she'd done something miraculous instead of invasive. You trusted me, Elara whispered. You left the door open. I did. His silver eyes held hers. And you proved that trust wasn't misplaced. The moment stretched, fragile and powerful, neither of them moving. Then Lucian exhaled and stepped back, breaking the spell. Come. We have much to discuss about House Draven. And very little time. But as he led her from the library, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, something irreversible. Chapter 5. Blood and Border. Lucian led her to a room she hadn't discovered in her daylight wandering, a war room, for lack of a better term. Maps covered every wall, pinned with colored markers. Red dominated the eastern territories. Black clustered to the west. Silver. Lucian's house nocturne held the center in a careful balance. The table in the room's center held miniature figures, a three-dimensional rendering of the surrounding lands. This is the current territory distribution, Lucian said, gesturing to the map. House Nocturne controls these forests, including the lands where your village sits. House Draven claims the eastern mountains and the river valleys beyond. Alara studied the red markers. They'd crept closer to the silver ones, encroaching like a disease. They're moving into your territory. They're testing boundaries. His jaw tightened. The Nocturne Accords established these borders 200 years ago. But Draven's current lord, Victor, is young by vampire standards, barely a century old and ambitious. He believes the old ways were superior. The old ways? When vampires took what they wanted, fed without consent, kept humans as cattle. Disgust colored his voice. The Accords changed that. Established rules. Feeding requires permission and compensation. Humans cannot be turned without their explicit, informed consent. Hunting for sport is forbidden. But Draven doesn't follow these rules. No. Lucian moved around the table, adjusting markers with precise movements. Victor sees the Accords as weakness. He's been recruiting vampires who share his philosophy, older ones who remember the time before laws, younger ones who've never known restraint. He looked up at her. Your pack's ritual suggests they've made contact with Draven scouts. Offered tribute in exchange for being left alone. The betrayal stung anew. They gave me to monsters to save themselves. Yes. No comfort in his voice, just hard truth. And when I took you instead, I made you a different kind of target. Alara's blood chilled. What do you mean? He moved to the eastern section of the map, tapping a cluster of red markers. Draven will see my protection of you as a challenge, an insult. By rights of their barbaric customs, you were offered to them. I've stolen what they consider theirs. I'm not property, no, but to Victor, all mortals are. His silver eyes met hers, somber and intense. Which means when you leave here, you won't just be fleeing your pack. You'll be fleeing House Draven. They'll hunt you to prove a point. The room felt suddenly smaller, colder. Then what do I do? You learn to survive. He crossed to a cabinet and withdrew several items: a silver dagger, a vial of dark liquid, and a leather pouch. First lesson, vampire weaknesses. He set the dagger on the table. Silver burns us. Not fatally, but painfully. A silver blade can slow a vampire long enough for you to escape. He uncorked the vial. Essence of nightshade concentrated. It won't kill us, but it will incapacitate for several hours. Enough time to run. And this? Alara picked up the leather pouch. Inside, dried herbs, salt, something that smelled like bitter ash, protection ward. Sprinkle it across a threshold, door, window, anywhere they might enter. It won't stop them, but it will burn like acid if they try to cross. Buys you time. He paused. These are practical defenses. But there's something else you need to understand. What? He gestured for her to sit. She did, and he took the chair across from her, his posture suddenly formal, tense. Vampire houses operate on blood oaths and hierarchies, he began. When a vampire claims someone's territory, property, or person, they mark that claim with blood. A single drop given and accepted creates a bond, not romantic, not necessarily, but recognized by all vampires as unbreakable. Alara's hand unconsciously moved to where he'd healed her wound. The blood you gave me was healing, nothing more. I didn't claim you. His gaze held hers. But I could. The air between them thickened. If I marked you as mine under my protection, Draven couldn't touch you without declaring war on House Nocturne. His voice was carefully controlled. You'd be safe. Completely. No matter where you went. Hope flared in her chest. Then do it. It's not that simple. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped. A blood claim creates obligation. You'd be bound to answer if I called. To return if I demanded. To obey house law. His expression turned pained. I'd own a piece of your freedom, Alara, and I swore I'd never do that to anyone. The hope guttered. So you're offering me death or servitude? No, his voice turned fierce. I'm offering you a choice with full knowledge of consequences. If I claim you, you live, but you're tied to me and House Nocturne until I release you or you die. If I don't, you're free but hunted. Either way, the decision is yours. Alara stared at him. He was giving her agency even when it would be easier to simply mark her and be done with it. Even when it would solve all his political problems and ensure her safety, because he valued her freedom more than his convenience. How long does a blood claim last? She asked quietly. Until dissolved by mutual agreement or death. He watched her carefully. I would release you the moment Draven's threat passed. You have my word, a vampire's word. His mouth quirked. Which you've learned is worth more than a human's. Fair point. Alara stood, pacing to the window. Night had fully fallen, stars scattered across black sky. Somewhere out there, House Draven waited, hungered, plotted. What if I refuse both options? She said. What if I just run tonight, disappear into some city far from here? They'd find you. No hesitation in his voice. Victor is patient, methodical. He'd track you for sport, make an example of you to punish my interference. Lucian rose, moving to stand beside her. I've seen what Draven does to those they hunt. I won't let that happen to you. Even if it means binding me? I'd rather you hate me and live than die free and broken. The raw honesty in his voice made her throat tight. She turned to face him, studying the ancient creature who'd shown her more kindness in days than her own kind had in years. If I agree, she said slowly, what does the ritual involve? Blood exchange. You'd drink a single drop of mine. I'd take a single drop of yours. Words spoken to seal the bond. His silver eyes searched hers. It doesn't hurt, and you can refuse at any point until the words are said. Would you feel it? The bond? Yes. I'd know if you were in danger, if you called for help. But I couldn't read your thoughts or control your actions. He paused. And you'd feel me as well. My presence, like a compass pointing home. Home. The word ached. I need time to think, Alara whispered. You have until tomorrow night. His voice was gentle. Then I escort you to the border, marked or unmarked. After that, you're beyond my protection either way. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Lucian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was achingly tender. "For what it's worth," he said softly, "I wish there was another way." "So do I." He withdrew his hand and stepped back, the careful distance returning. "I'll have the house prepare dinner. You should eat. Maintain your strength." He left her there, alone, with impossible choices, and the weight of survival pressing down on her shoulders. Alara pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching her reflection blur with unshed tears. Freedom or safety, autonomy or protection, life as her own woman, hunted and alone, or life as a claimed mortal, safe, but bound to a vampire who'd already begun to matter more than she wanted to admit. Chapter 6. The siege begins. Alara barely slept. She'd returned to her room after a silent dinner, her mind spinning through scenarios, each worse than the last. Freedom meant death, protection meant bondage, and tomorrow night to night now. She realized as moonlight crept across her floor she had to choose. A sound jolted her upright, not from inside the house, outside, distant but distinct breaking glass. A crash, then silence so complete it screamed danger. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The door burst open. Lucian stood there, no longer calm and controlled, but coiled tight with lethal energy. His eyes had changed, still silver, but brighter now, almost glowing. "Predatory. They're here," he said. "Get dressed. Now." "Who Draven?" Terror spiked through her. She scrambled out of bed, yanking on the wool dress with shaking hands. Lucian moved to the window, peering through the curtains, his body tense as a drawn bowstring. "How many?" she whispered. "6 that I can sense. Maybe more in the forest." He turned to her, and his expression was harder than she'd ever seen it. "They've violated the accords. Attacked a house, knocked her an estate. This is an act of war. What do they want?" "You." He crossed to her into strides, gripping her shoulders. "Listen carefully. There's a safe room in the cellar, past my day rest chamber. Iron walls, no windows. They can't break through before dawn. What about you?" "I'll hold them off. 6 against 1. I'm older, stronger." His jaw set. "And this is my territory. But I need you safe. I can't fight and protect you simultaneously." A tremendous crash shook the house. Downstairs, they were inside. Lucian's hands tightened on her shoulders. "Go, now." Through the servants' passage behind that panel, he gestured to the wall, straight down to the cellar. "Don't stop. Don't look back. Lucian, please." The word was raw, desperate. "I can't lose you." The admission hung between them for a heartbeat, then footsteps thundered up the main staircase to many. Too fast. Lucian shoved her toward the panel. It swung open at his touch, revealing a narrow passage lit by flickering sconces. "Go." Alara ran. Behind her, she heard the bedroom door splinter. Voices cruel, mocking. Then Lucian's voice, cold as winter. "You've made a grave mistake." The sounds of violence erupted. Crashes, snarls, something that might have been screaming. Alara fled down the passage, tears streaming, her bare feet slapping against stone. The stairs spiraled down, down, into darkness. She reached the cellar level, gasping, and saw the iron door Lucian had described. A figure stepped from the shadows, male, pale, eyes like blood-soaked rubies. "Hello." "Little offering," he purred. Alara screamed. She turned to run, but he moved faster, impossibly fast, blocking her path. Up close, he looked young, perhaps 25, with sharp features and a smile that promised pain. "Victor sent his regards," the vampire said, reaching for her. Alara's hand closed around the only weapon she had, the silver dagger Lucian had given her, still tucked in her dress pocket from earlier. She drove it into his chest. The vampire shrieked, stumbling back. Silver burned through fabric and flesh, smoke rising from the wound. Not fatal, but agonizing. Alara didn't wait. She bolted past him, racing for the safe room. The iron door stood ajar. She yanked it wider, threw herself inside. A hand caught her ankle. She fell hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. The burned vampire hauled her backward, his face twisted with rage. "You'll pay for that, mortal." "Let her go." Lucian's voice, cold, lethal. He appeared at the top of the cellar stairs, and Alara's breath caught. Blood streaked his face and hands not his own. His clothing was torn, revealing pale skin unmarked by injury. He'd fought 6 vampires and won, but he looked furious. The vampire holding Alara released her instantly, backing away. "Lord Ashford, we didn't mean to invade my home." Attack my guest? Lucian descended the stairs with terrible slowness, each step measured. Didn't mean to violate the accords your house swore to uphold. We were following orders. Victor's orders carry no weight here. Lucian's eyes blazed silver fire. This is House Nocturne territory. You have no authority, no rights, no protection. The vampire tried to run. Lucian caught him by the throat, slamming him against the stone wall hard enough to crack it. You touched what's mine. The words resonated through the cellar, through Alara's bones. I'm sorry, please, the vampire choked. Tell Victor, Lucian said softly, that if he wants war, he'll have it. But he will not have her. He released the vampire, who collapsed, gasping. Run, now, before I change my mind about letting you leave alive. The vampire fled, scrambling up the stairs and disappearing into the night. Silence fell. Lucian stood frozen, his back to Alara, shoulders heaving. When he finally turned, his eyes still burned with that inhuman light, but his expression had softened into something like anguish. Are you hurt? His voice was rough. Alara shook her head, unable to speak. He crossed to her in 3 strides, dropping to his knees beside where she'd fallen. His hands hovered over her, not touching, as if afraid he'd break her. I should have anticipated this. Should have had better wards. Should have. You saved me, she interrupted. Again, barely. His hands clenched into fists. If he'd reached you first. If he'd taken you, but he didn't, because you fought. His gaze dropped to the silver dagger still clutched in her hand. A ghost of pride flickered across his face. You stabbed him. You taught me vampire weaknesses. I taught you theory. You applied it under pressure. He met her eyes. You're stronger than you know, Alara Thorne. The way he said her name reverent, almost wondering, made her chest ache. They'll come back, she whispered. Won't they? Yes. He rose, helping her to her feet. Victor won't stop now. This was a test, a show of force. He wanted to see if I'd truly protect you. His jaw tightened. Now he knows I will. At what cost? Whatever it takes. No hesitation. No doubt. Alara stared at him, this ancient vampire who'd declared her his, who'd fought off 6 attackers, who looked at her like she was something precious instead of disposable. The blood claim, she said suddenly. I've decided. Lucian went very still. You don't have to choose now. You're in shock. I'm choosing now. She squared her shoulders, meeting his silver gaze steadily. If they're coming back anyway, if Victor won't stop, then I want every advantage, every protection. She took a shaking breath. Mark me. Make me yours. Alara, not because I'm desperate, not because I'm scared, though she was both, because I trust you, because you've proven you use that claim to protect, not to possess. Her voice strengthened. Because you asked my consent every step of the way, and I'm giving it now, freely. Emotion flickered across his face, too complex to name. Relief, gratitude, something deeper that made her pulse quicken. Once done, it can't be undone easily, he warned. Are you certain? Yes. He searched her eyes for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. Here, she asked. Now? No. He glanced up the stairs where sounds of pursuit had long since faded. The ritual requires words, intent. It should be done properly, not in fear. He offered his hand. Come. The safe room will hold until dawn. We'll complete the claim there, where you're protected on all sides. Alara took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, cold, strong, steady. Together, they entered the iron-walled sanctuary. The door swung shut behind them with a sound like fate closing, and in the candlelit space, surrounded by ancient stone and older magic, Alara prepared to bind herself to a vampire who'd already claimed her heart. Chapter 7. The Blood Oath safe room was smaller than Alara expected, perhaps 12 feet square, with iron walls that gleamed dull in the candlelight. No windows, no decorations, just bare necessity and absolute protection. Lucian moved through the space with practiced efficiency, lighting additional candles until warm light filled every corner. His movements were controlled now. The battle fury faded, but tension still coiled through his frame. Are you certain? He asked for the 3rd time. Yes. Alara's voice didn't waver. He turned to face her fully, and in the flickering light, she saw the weight he carried: centuries of loneliness, decades of carefully maintained distance, and now this, a mortal woman choosing to bind herself to him, not out of desperation, but trust. The ritual is simple, he began, his tone formal. Teacher to student. I'll make a small cut on my palm. You'll do the same. We'll press them together while speaking the words of claim. What words? I'll speak first. By blood freely given, I claim you as mine to protect, to shelter, to defend against all who would do you harm. My house is your sanctuary. My strength is your shield. This I swear by moon and night eternal. He paused. Then you respond, by blood freely given, I accept your claim. Your protection, your shelter, your defense. Your house is my sanctuary. Your strength is my shield. This I accept, by moon and night eternal. The formality of it struck her. This wasn't just magic, it was contract, covenant, sacred in its way. What happens after we speak the words? She asked. The bond forms. You'll feel it immediately, like a thread connecting us. I'll be able to sense your general location, your emotional state if it's extreme, fear, pain, joy. His silver eyes held hers. And you'll sense me the same way. It's not mind reading, more like awareness. Will it hurt? No, it feels warm, settling, like finding something you didn't know you'd lost. His voice softened. At least, that's what I've been told. I've never claimed anyone before. Alar's eyes widened. Never? In 300 years? Never. He looked away, something vulnerable crossing his face. I told you I swore I wouldn't own anyone's freedom. This will be the first and only blood claim I've ever made. The magnitude of that confession settled over her. He was breaking his own vow for her, compromising principles he'd held for centuries because her safety mattered more than his pride. Lucian, she waited until he looked at her. Thank you. Don't thank me for trapping you. You're not trapping me. You're keeping me alive. She stepped closer. There's a difference. He exhaled slowly, and some of the tension left his shoulders. You're extraordinary. You know that? Heat crept up her neck. I'm really not. You are. He said it with such certainty. You've been thrown away, hunted, attacked, and you're still standing. Still fighting. Still choosing trust over bitterness. His hand rose, hesitated, then gently cupped her cheek. That's not ordinary, Alara. The touch sent electricity through her. His palm was cool against her flushed skin, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating tenderness. We should begin, he said quietly, though he didn't pull away. The claim will strengthen the wards. Make this room impassable even to Victor himself. Alara nodded. Not trusting her voice, Lucian withdrew his hand and produced a small silver knife from his coat, different from the dagger he'd given her. This one's ceremonial, with symbols etched into the blade. This has been in my family since before my turning. Used only for blood oaths and house rituals. He made a precise cut across his left palm. Dark blood welled, almost black in the candlelight. Then he offered her the knife. Alara took it with steady hands. The blade was cold and surprisingly light. She pressed the edge to her palm, hesitated only a moment, then drew it across her skin in a clean line. Pain flared, sharp and immediate. Her blood rose, bright red against pale skin so different from his, so vividly mortal. Ready? Lucian asked. Ready. He took her bleeding hand in his, their palms pressing together. The moment their blood mingled, warmth bloomed through her, not painful, but intense, electric. Lucian's voice rang out, clear and commanding. By blood freely given, I claim you as mine to protect, to shelter, to defend against all who would do you harm. My house is your sanctuary. My strength is your shield. This I swear by moon and night eternal. The air itself seemed to listen. To witness, Alara drew a breath and spoke her part, meaning every word. By blood freely given, I accept your claim. Your protection, your shelter, your defense. Your house is my sanctuary. Your strength is my shield. This I accept, by moon and night eternal. The warmth exploded into heat, not burning, more like sunlight after years of shadow. It rushed through her veins, wrapped around her heart, settled into her bones. And with it came awareness. Lucian. His presence, solid and real, like a compass pointing true north. She could feel him, not thoughts or words, but essence. Strength, loneliness, fierce protectiveness, carefully leashed desire. Her eyes flew open. Had they been closed? She didn't remember closing them. Lucian stared at her with wonder. You feel it? Yes. The word came out breathless. Is it always this intense? I don't know. His thumb stroked over her knuckles, where their hands were still joined. But I feel you too. Your courage. Your pain. His voice dropped. Your trust. The bond hummed between them, golden and unbreakable. Slowly, reluctantly, Lucian released her hand. Both their cuts had healed his instantly, hers within seconds, leaving only a faint pink line that would fade by morning. "It's done," he said. "You're marked now. Mine. By every law vampires recognize. Draven can't touch you without declaring war on all of House Nocturne, so I'm safe. You're safe." But he didn't sound relieved. He sounded conflicted. "What's wrong?" Ilara asked. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. "I told myself I was doing this to protect you. That it was necessity, not choice." His shoulders were rigid. "But feeling you through the bond, knowing you're tied to me now, I can't pretend it's purely strategic." "What do you mean?" He faced her again, and his expression was raw, unguarded. "I wanted to claim you, Ilara, not just to save you, but because the thought of you leaving, of never seeing you again, was unbearable." He laughed bitterly. 3 centuries of solitude, and 2 days with you, undid all my carefully built walls." Her heart stuttered. "Lucian, I know. It's too fast, too much. You're bound to me now, out of survival." "Not," he cut himself off. "Not what?" She pressed, even though she knew. Even though the bond whispered it to her. "Not desire," he finished quietly. "Not feeling." Ilara stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "You think I don't feel anything? You're grateful. That's different. You're right. I am grateful." She reached up, mirroring his earlier gesture, cupping his face with both hands. "But I'm also terrified and fascinated," and she swallowed hard, "drawn to you in ways that have nothing to do with gratitude." His eyes widened. "Ilara, you said the bond doesn't lie. Can't you feel it? What I'm feeling right now." He went very still. Through the connection, she felt his awareness shift, focusing on her, sensing the flutter in her chest, the warmth pooling low in her stomach. The desire she'd been trying to ignore since he'd first knelt beside her bed to heal her wounds. "Oh," he breathed. "Yeah." She managed a shaky smile. "Oh." His hands came up to cover hers, pressing them more firmly against his face. "This complicates things. Everything's already complicated." "Fair point." His mouth quirked. Then his expression turned serious. "But we're under siege. You've just been bound to me by magic. You don't fully understand. This isn't the time for what? Honesty?" She held his gaze. "I'm not asking for promises. I'm not asking for forever. I'm just asking you not to pretend this is one-sided." The vulnerability in his eyes nearly undid her. "It's not," he admitted. "Not even close." The confession hung between them, weighted with possibility and danger. Outside the safe room, somewhere in the night house, Draven plotted. Victor schemed. War gathered on the horizon. But here, an iron-walled sanctuary, with blood oaths, fresh and impossible feelings rising between them, Ilara let herself hope. Chapter 8. Aftermath. And Ashesthi stayed in the safe room until dawn. Not out of necessity, the Draven vampires had fled hours ago, but because neither wanted to break the fragile intimacy that had settled between them. They sat on the floor, backs against the iron wall, close enough that their shoulders touched. The bond hummed contentedly at the contact. Lucian spoke first, his voice low in the candlelit space. "When the sun rises, I'll be helpless again, paralyzed. The house's wards will hold. But if Draven sends a daytime assault, human mercenaries or bloodbound servants, you'll be alone." "You think they will?" "Victor is nothing if not thorough." His jaw tightened. "He'll want to test the claim. See if I truly marked you, or if it was a bluff." Ilara absorbed this. How would he test it? By trying to take you. If the claim is real, you'll burn anyone from House Draven who touches you. Their blood will reject yours. It's unpleasant for both parties. And if they use humans, then you'll need to defend yourself. He turned to look at her. "Can you do that? If it comes to violence?" She thought of the silver dagger plunging into vampire flesh. The terror, the necessity. "Yes, good." He didn't sound pleased, just resigned. "I'll leave you weapons, instructions. The house will help. It's bound to protect anyone under my claim now. But ultimately, you'll have to fight. I've been fighting my whole life," Ilara said quietly. "Just usually not with knives." Understanding flickered across his face. "Your pack. They broke me down slowly. Made me believe I was worthless. Expendable." She stared at her hands, one still faintly marked from where their blood had mingled. "When they chose me for the offering, part of me wasn't even surprised. Just tired." Lucian's hand found hers, threading their fingers together. The bond pulsed warm. "You're not worthless. You never were. I'm starting to believe that." She squeezed his hand. You make me believe that. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what they'd survived and what lay ahead pressing down on them. Tell me something, Alara said. About your life before you were turned. He exhaled slowly. What do you want to know? Anything, everything. She shifted to face him. You know my story, the widow, the pack, the offering. But I only know fragments of yours. Lucian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I was the third son. No inheritance, no prospects. But I loved music. A faint smile touched his lips. I played violin, not well enough to make a living, but well enough to matter to me. Do you still play? Sometimes. When the loneliness gets too heavy, his thumb stroked absently over her knuckles. It's one of the few things from my mortal life that still brings joy. What else brings you joy? He looked at her then, really looked, and the intensity in his silver eyes made her breath catch. You, he said simply, these past 2 days, watching you survive, watching you fight, watching you choose trust over fear. His voice roughened. You brought light into 3 centuries of darkness, Alara. That's no small thing. Her throat tightened. Lucian, a shudder ran through him. He pulled away, rising abruptly. Dawn, I can feel it coming. Alara stood as well, recognizing the tension in his frame. What do you need? To get you upstairs, armed, safe. He moved to the door, then paused. And to trust that you'll survive the day. They ascended from the cellar together, emerging into a house that looked like a battlefield. Furniture overturned, tapestries torn, scorch marks on the floors where vampire blood had burned. Lucian surveyed the damage with grim acceptance. The house will repair itself by nightfall. It always does. He led her to his study, gathering weapons with military efficiency. The silver dagger, 2 more vials of nightshade essence, a crossbow that looked ancient but well-maintained. Silver-tipped bolts, he explained. Aim for the chest. It won't kill them, but it will hurt enough to make them retreat. Alara accepted each item, committing their use to memory. The windows are warded now, Lucian continued, his movements growing slower, more deliberate. The sun was close. Nothing vampire can cross them, but humans can. Watch for scouts. Anyone approaching the estate. I will. He gripped the desk, steadying himself. His skin had paled further, taking on an almost translucent quality. I'm sorry for leaving you to face this alone. You're not leaving. You're resting. She crossed to him, taking his cold hands in her warm ones. I'll be here when you wake. Promise me. Urgency crept into his voice. Promise you won't do anything foolish. If they breach the house, you hide, you run. You don't try to be a hero. I promise to survive, she said carefully. Not agreeing to his terms exactly, but close enough. He seemed to recognize the loophole but was too weakened to argue. The cellar, the safe room. That's where his words slurred. His eyes struggled to focus. I know. Alara guided him toward the door. Come on. I'll help you to your rest chamber. They made it halfway down the corridor before his legs gave out. Alara caught him as best she could, but he was dead weight literally. She eased him to the floor, cradling his head. Stubborn, he murmured, the word barely audible. Should have gone down sooner. Shh, save your strength. His hand found hers, squeezing weakly. Alara, I'm here. Don't let them take you. They won't. She stroked his hair back from his forehead, the gesture tender, intimate. I'm yours, remember? The claim protects me. His eyes closed, his chest stilled. His hand went limp in hers, and Alara was alone. She sat there for a moment, holding his lifeless hand, feeling the bond stretch between them like a tether to an anchored ship. He wasn't gone, just suspended, trapped in daylight paralysis, vulnerable. She couldn't leave him in the hallway. With effort, she dragged him carefully, respectfully to the nearest room with heavy curtains, drew them tight against the impending sunrise, lifted him onto the bed with strength born of desperation. He looked peaceful, young, heartbreakingly human in repose. Alara pressed a kiss to his cold forehead. I'll keep watch, she whispered. Sleep safe. Then she armed herself, positioned herself by the window, and waited. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky gold and pink, beautiful, deadly, and right on schedule. She saw them, 3 figures approaching through the forest, human, armed, moving with the confidence of those who thought their quarry helpless. Alara checked the crossbow, loaded a silver-tipped bolt. The bond pulls faintly, Lucian's unconscious presence, a steady warmth at the back of her mind. She wasn't alone. Not really. And she wasn't helpless either. The first mercenary reached the front door, tested the handle, found it unlocked. Lucian's wards only worked against vampires. The door swung open. Alara raised the crossbow, sighted down the bolt, and spoke loud enough to carry. House Nocturne does not welcome trespassers. Leave now, or learn why that is. The mercenary laughed. Little girl playing guard? Where's your vampire master? Resting. She kept her voice steady. Which means I'm alone, unprotected, easy prey. She smiled without warmth. Or so you think. The mercenary stepped inside. Alara pulled the trigger. The bolt took him in the shoulder, not a kill shot, but devastating nonetheless. He screamed, crumpling. The other two hesitated. I have 11 more bolts, Alara called out. And I'm a much better shot when I'm not being polite. Who's next? For a long, tense moment, nobody moved. Then the mercenaries grabbed their wounded companion and fled. Alara lowered the crossbow, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Through the bond, she felt something. Approval? Pride? Hard to tell when Lucian was unconscious, but the warmth was unmistakable. She closed the door, reset the wards as he'd taught her, and settled in to guard a vampire who'd claimed her, trusted her, and somehow made her feel more valued than she'd ever been when she was free. The day stretched ahead, long and dangerous, but Alara Thorne had survived worse. Chapter 9. Lessons in the dark. Dusk came like a held breath released. Alara had spent the day fortifying, learning, preparing. She'd discovered that Lucian's library contained not just literature, but history's detailed accounts of vampire houses, their laws, their wars. She'd read until her eyes burned, absorbing everything she could about the world she'd been thrust into. House Draven, founded 1523, known for brutality and adherence to old ways, rejected the Nocturne Accords. Current Lord, Victor Draven, aged 97, turned during the Napoleonic Wars. Ruthless, ambitious, feared even by his own house members. House Nocturne, founded 1782, architects of the Accords, valued consent, order, and diplomacy. Lucian's house, her house now. Technically, the weight of that hadn't fully settled yet. She was reading about blood claim hierarchies when she felt it, a surge through the bond. Warmth, awareness. Lucian, waking. Alara closed the book and hurried to the room where she'd left him. He was sitting up when she entered, looking disoriented but alert. His eyes found her immediately, and relief flooded his expression. You're safe, not a question. He could feel it through the bond. I'm safe. She crossed to the bed. 3 mercenaries came at midday. I sent them away with a crossbow bolt as a message. His eyebrows rose. You shot someone? In the shoulder. Non-fatal. She sat beside him. They won't underestimate me again. Something fierce and admiring crossed his face. No, they won't. He reached out, cupping her cheek. You protected my rest. Defended the house alone. He seemed to search for words. Magnificent. Heat flooded her cheeks. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. His thumb stroked her cheekbone. You could have hidden in the safe room. Could have let them search the house. Take what they wanted. But you didn't. They were here for me. For you. I wasn't going to make it easy. The bond pulls between them, pride from him, determination from her, and beneath it all, something deeper, tender, growing. Lucian's hand fell away, and he stood, testing his strength. We need to talk about what happens next. More attacks? Undoubtedly. But also he gestured for her to follow him back to the war room. The maps had been restored, the markers reset. Victor's made his move. Attacked a House Nocturne estate. Sent daytime mercenaries. These are acts of war. So what does House Nocturne do? Responds. He moved to the table, adjusting red markers with grim precision. I've already sent word to the magistrate. By tomorrow night, there will be a formal inquiry. Victor will be summoned to answer for the violations, and if he refuses, then the council declares him rogue. Every house will have permission to hunt Draven's members on sight. His expression darkened. It will be bloody, costly. Many will die, vampire and human both. Alara's stomach twisted. Because of me. No, he turned sharply. Because Victor chose to violate the Accords. Because he values power over peace. You're not responsible for his choices, but I'm the excuse. You're the catalyst. There's a difference. He crossed to her, taking her hands. This war has been brewing for decades. You simply forced it into the open. Small comfort. What about my village? She asked quietly. The people there, they didn't know what they were doing. They were just scared. Lucian's jaw tightened. They offered you to monsters. Fear doesn't excuse that. They're still human. Still vulnerable. He studied her for a long moment, and she felt his emotions through the bond: frustration, admiration, reluctant understanding. You want me to protect them. I want you to not punish them for being foolish and frightened. She met his gaze steadily. Isn't that what the Accords are about? Protecting humans from becoming collateral damage in vampire politics? He exhaled slowly. You're going to be the death of my carefully cultivated ruthlessness? Is that a yes? I'll consider it. But his mouth quirked. After the council meeting, after Victor is dealt with, then we can discuss extending nocturne protection to your former pack. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. They'll owe House Nocturne a debt. One I'll expect them to repay. Fair enough. Lucian released her hands and moved to the window, staring out at the darkening forest. There's something else we need to address. What? Your future. After this is over. He didn't turn around. The blood claim protects you from Draven and any other house that might see you as prey. But it also binds you to me. To Nocturne territory. Alar's chest tightened. I thought you said you'd release me once the danger passed. I will. If that's what you want. Now, he did turn, and his expression was carefully neutral. But you should know your options. The claim allows you certain privileges within House Nocturne. Protection, resources, a place to belong. As what? Your servant? As my guest. My ally? He paused. My companion, if you wished it. The word hung between them, weighted with implication. Companion, Alara repeated slowly. What does that mean exactly? It means you'd live here, under my protection, but with your own autonomy. Free to come and go as you pleased within Nocturne territory. Free to pursue whatever life you wanted: studies, work, simple peace. His voice softened. Free to leave, if you ever chose to. But the bond would remain, yes, unless we both agreed to dissolve it. He moved closer. I'm not trying to trap you, Alara. I'm offering you a choice. Stay and build something new. Or leave, and I'll ensure you have enough gold to start over anywhere you want. Her mind spun. A week ago, she'd been a widow in a cruel village, counting down days until she became their sacrifice. Now, Vampire offered her sanctuary, resources, freedom, and beneath it all, the unspoken possibility of something more. I don't have to decide tonight, do I? She asked. No, take all the time you need. But something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. Hope, maybe. Or fear of rejection. Through the bond, she felt his carefully controlled longing. He wanted her to stay, wanted it desperately. But he'd never force it, never manipulate. He'd offer and then step back, giving her the agency she'd been denied her entire life. Can I ask you something? Alara said. Anything. If I stayed not as your claimed mortal, but as something more, what would that look like? His breath caught. More? You feel it too. Through the bond. This, she gestured between them, isn't just protection and gratitude anymore. No, he agreed quietly. It's not. So what is it? He closed the distance between them, his movements slow, giving her time to retreat. She didn't. He stopped inches away, close enough that she could see the faint tracery of silver veins beneath his pale skin. The way his eyes had darkened with emotion. It's want, he said, voice low and rough. It's 300 years of loneliness recognizing its end. It's looking at you and seeing not just someone to protect, but someone to know, to trust. His hand rose, hovering near her face. To love, perhaps, given time. Her heart hammered. That fast? Time moves differently when you're immortal. A week can feel like years, or a century can pass in a blink. His fingers finally made contact, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. What I feel for you isn't fast, Alara. It's inevitable. She leaned into his touch, letting herself feel the full force of the bond: his desire, his tenderness, his bone-deep need for connection, and her own answering wants. Safety, yes, but also intimacy, partnership, the terrifying, exhilarating possibility of being chosen, valued, loved. I'm still mortal, she whispered. I'll age, die, you'll go on. I know. Pain shadowed his features. Believe me, I know. But I'd rather have decades with you than centuries alone. What if I wanted more than decades? His eyes widened. you'd consider I don't know. Honesty felt essential. Right now, I can barely process being claimed. But someday, maybe. She swallowed hard. Maybe I'd want forever too. The hope that blazed across his face was almost painful to witness. We have time, he said softly. Time to learn each other. Time to decide. No pressure. No expectations. Except the war. His expression hardened. Except the war. Reality crashed back. Victor, Draven, the council meeting. Survival before romance. But Lucian's hand remained on her face, anchoring her. We'll face it together, he promised. Whatever comes, and standing there in his war room, claimed and protected, and suddenly full of hope, Elara believed him. Chapter 10. The final reckoning. Council convened at midnight in neutral territory, an ancient cathedral abandoned by mortals a century ago. Now claimed by vampire law as sacred ground where no house could raise arms against another. Lucian had dressed formally for the occasion, black coat with silver embroidery, his house crest embroidered at the collar. He looked every inch the lord. He was powerful, ancient, unmovable. Elara wore a dress he'd provided, deep emerald velvet that brought out the color of her eyes, modest but elegant. Acclaimed mortal attending council. Unprecedented, he'd told her. Dangerous, but necessary. Victor will try to provoke me, Lucian warned, as their carriage rattled through the forest. He'll claim your stolen property. That I violated his rights by interfering with a sanctioned offering. But the offerings aren't sanctioned anymore. You said the accords dissolved those pacts. They did. But Victor will argue that local customs supersede nocturne law. That your pact's traditions gave him rights. His jaw tightened. It's nonsense. But he'll say anything to justify his actions. Elara's hand found his. The bond hummed between them, steady and sure. What do I do? Stay silent unless addressed directly. Let me handle the politics. His thumb stroked over her knuckles. And if things turn violent, run. The cathedral has mortal safe chambers. Promise me you'll hide. Lucian, promise me. She squeezed his hand. I promise to survive. However, that looks. He recognized the same careful non-agreement from before, but they'd arrived. The cathedral loomed ahead, Gothic spires piercing the night sky, stained glass windows dark and haunting. Lucian helped her from the carriage, his hand warm at the small of her back. Together, they ascended the stone steps. The cathedral's interior took Elara's breath away. Vaulted ceilings stretched into shadow. Candles burned in iron sconces, thousands of them, casting dancing light across carved pillars. And in the center, arranged in a circle, thrones. 7 of them, 6 were occupied. Lucian led her to the 7th throne, his seat on the council, and gestured to a smaller chair positioned slightly behind it. For claimed companions, he murmured. Rare but permitted. Elara sat, acutely aware of the eyes on her. 6 ancient vampires, each representing a different house, each radiating centuries of power, and directly across the circle, Victor Draven. He was younger looking than she'd expected, perhaps mid-20s in appearance, with pale blonde hair and eyes like frozen blood. Beautiful in the way predators were beautiful. Deadly. His gaze locked onto her, and his smile was all teeth. Lord Ashford, how kind of you to bring refreshments to council. Lucian's hand tightened on the armrest. Address the council with respect, Victor, or I'll remind you why they call me the Silver Storm. A woman to Lucian's left, dark-skinned, regal, ancient beyond measure, raised her hand. Enough. We convene to address accusations of accord violations. Her voice carried absolute authority. Magistrate Voss presiding. Lord Ashford, state your grievance. Lucian stood. 3 nights passed. 6 members of House Draven invaded my estate. They attacked without provocation, attempted to kidnap my claimed mortal, and violated territorial boundaries established by the Accords to centuries ago. Victor leaned back in his throne, utterly unconcerned. I was merely reclaiming what was offered to my house. The humans' pack provided her as tribute. Lord Ashford stole her. The old pacts are dissolved, Lucian countered. You have no claim to offerings, no right to demand tribute, and certainly no right to invade Nocturne territory. Local customs mean nothing against Accord law. Lucian's voice cut like steel. You know this, Victor. You simply chose to ignore it because you thought I wouldn't respond. Victor's smile sharpened. What I know is that you've gone soft, Ashford. Claiming a mortal out of sentiment rather than strategy. Protecting cattle instead of feeding on them. He leaned forward. The old ways were superior. You've forgotten what it means to be vampire. I've forgotten nothing. Lucian's eyes blazed silver. I remember when vampires were hunted to near extinction because we treated mortals as prey. I remember the wars that nearly destroyed us all. The Accords saved our species by teaching us restraint. And you spit on that legacy for what? Pride? Power? Evolution? Victor stood as well. We're apex predators, Ashford. The Accords have made us weak, dependent on mortal consent, bound by rules that serve cattle more than hunters. His gaze slid to Alara. That girl should be my meal, not your companion. Rage exploded through the bond Lucians, barely controlled. But before he could respond, Alara stood. Every vampire in the cathedral turned to stare. You may address the council if recognized, Magistrate Voss said, surprise in her ancient voice. Do you wish to speak? Yes. Alara's voice didn't shake. I have something Lord Draven needs to hear. Victor laughed. The cattle speaks. How novel. I'm not cattle. She stepped forward, positioning herself between the thrones. I'm a woman who was betrayed by her own people, offered as sacrifice to a monster, and saved by a vampire with more honor than any human I've known. How touching. Victor's tone dripped mockery. You want the old ways? Alara continued, ignoring his sarcasm. Fine, let me tell you what those ways created. Humans who live in terror. Villages that resort to human sacrifice out of desperation. People so afraid of vampires that they'd rather kill their own than risk your hunger. Her hands clenched. That's your legacy, Lord Draven. Fear, hatred, a world where humans and vampires can never coexist. We're not meant to coexist. We're meant to rule. And how's that working out? She gestured around the cathedral. You sit in an abandoned church, hiding from sunlight, arguing over laws, because the alternative is extinction. You need the Accords. You need human cooperation. Without it, you're just corpses waiting for dawn. Silence fell. Victor's expression had gone ice cold. Dangerous. Careful, girl. You're only alive because Ashford claimed you. Exactly. She met his gaze steadily. The claim protects me, which means your attacks were meaningless. You can't have me, can't hurt me, can't use me to prove whatever point you're trying to make. She stepped closer to Lucian's throne. You lost. Accept it. For a heartbeat, she thought Victor would attack anyway, violate every rule, launch himself across the circle. But Magistrate Voss spoke first. The girl makes valid points. Lord Draven, your actions violated the Accords on multiple fronts. Territorial invasion, attempted kidnapping, assault on a claimed mortal. Her voice hardened. The council finds you guilty. Victor's jaw clenched. What punishment? Reparations to House Nocturne, public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, and restriction to Draven territory for the next decade. Voss's eyes glinted. Step outside your borders, and every house has permission to hunt you. You can't, we can. We have. It's decided. She looked to Lucian. Is this acceptable, Lord Ashford? Lucian's hand found Alara's squeezing gently. Through the bond, she felt his pride, his relief. It's acceptable, provided Lord Draven also extends protection to the mortal village that offered my companion. They were manipulated by his house. They deserve safety, not punishment. Victor's face twisted with fury, but he was trapped, outvoted, outmaneuvered. Agreed, Magistrate Voss declared. The village falls under joint protection Nocturne and council oversight. Lord Draven, do you accept these terms? A long, tense silence. Then, I accept. The words sounded like poison on his tongue. Council is adjourned. Voss rose, and the other vampires followed. May the Accords hold. May the Accords hold. They echoed. Victor stalked from the cathedral without another word, his fury palpable. Lucian pulled Alara close, his arms wrapping around her. You were incredible, he murmured against her hair. Brave and brilliant and absolutely terrifying. She laughed shakily. I called a vampire Lord Cattle adjacent. I might have lost my mind. You won us the war. He pulled back to look at her, cupping her face. Victor can't touch you, can't touch your village. And he's been humiliated in front of the council. He'll rage, but he won't act. Not for years. So it's over? It's over. He kissed her forehead. You're safe. We're safe. The bond sang between them relief, joy, and beneath it all, deepening love. Take me home, Alara whispered. Lucian smiled real and warm and devastating. Always.